Good morning. The October 19th, 2022 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called in order. For folks who are attending in person, please ensure that all your electronic devices are on silent or if not turned off. At this time, we also ask that everyone participating in this meeting wear a mask. The board is fully vaccinated as well as boosted. If you are presenting and you come before the mic, you are able or allowed to take off your mask. For those who are attending virtually, please keep yourself on mute until the board recognizes you. At this time, we're going to turn it over to our amazing clerk, Ms. Celeste Amato, for any corrections, additions, or noted abstentions on today's agenda. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. This morning, we have no changes or corrections to the agenda. We have received one protest on page number 4. Item is City Council Bill 22-0223. A protest was received from Lorraine Jarowski Brockmeyer. We have, I don't see any deferrals or withdrawals, but I believe there
are two. Here.
Sorry. I lost access to my email yesterday. Apologies, everyone. I thought we had some deferrals. On pages 65 through 66, item number 13, Bureau of Procurement, contract B5000-4352, Armed Guards, Security Guards. This item is being deferred until November 2nd at the request of the City Administrator. And on page number 123, item number 3, Bureau of Procurement, contract B5000-6199, remove, furnish, and install carpet and various types of floor coverings. This item is being deferred until November 2nd at the request of the Chief of Minority Women-Owned Business Opportunity Office. Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Teamwork. The following items have been moved to the non-routine agenda on page number 1, item 1 and 2, Department of Audits Biennial Performance Audit of the Department of Law for the fiscal years ended June 30, 2021 and June 30, 2020, and Biennial Performance Audit of the Department of Planning Permit Process for the fiscal years ended June 30, 2021 and June 30, 2020. Page number 4, City Council Bill 22-0223. A protest, again, was received from Ms. Lorraine Jarowski Brockmeyer. On page number 9, Law Department Settlement Agreement and Release. On pages 70 through 72, Department of Public Works First Amendment to Consent Order. On page 110, Department of Finance FY22 Carry Forwards and Contingency Fund Utilization. On page 112, Department of Finance FY22 Year-End AAO Supplemental Appropriation Request for the Convention Center Hotel. Page 113, Department of Finance FY22 Year-End AAO Supplemental Appropriation Request for the Baltimore City Health Department. Page 114, Department of Finance FY22 Year-End AAO Supplemental Appropriation Request for the Department of General Services. Page 115, Department of Finance FY22 Year-End AAO Supplemental Appropriation Request for the Department of Planning. Page 116, Department of Finance FY22 Year-End AAO Supplemental Appropriation Request for the Department of Finance. Page 117, Department of Finance FY22 Year-End AAO Supplemental Appropriation Request for the Department of Transportation. Page 118, Department of Finance FY22 Year-End AAO Supplemental Appropriation Request for Miscellaneous General Expenses. And finally, on page 119, Department of Finance FY22 Year-End Appropriation Adjustment Order. We have the following abstentions to note. The Honorable Mayor Brandon Scott is abstaining on page 18, Health Department Agreement with Johns Hopkins University School of Nursing, and on page 27, Health Department Agreement with Johns Hopkins Medicine, Bayview Medical Center. The Honorable President Nick Mosby is abstaining on page number 4, City Council Bills, and on page 190, Office of the City Council President, Travel Request. The Honorable Bill Henry is abstaining on pages 80 through 81, Mayor's Office of Recovery Programs, Grant Agreement with Chesapeake Shakespeare Company, page 171, Retirement Savings Plan, Travel Request, page 172, Department of Housing and Community Development, Travel Request, page 173, Health Department, Travel Request, page 180, Mayor's Office, Travel Request, and pages 181 through 189, all Mayor's Office travel requests. Page 190, Office of the Council President, travel request. The city solicitor, Jim Shea, has no abstentions to note, and the Director of Public Works, Jason Mitchell, also has no abstentions to note this morning. Mr. President, that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to approve the opening statement.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The opening statement is adopted. I would now direct the board's attention to a memorandum from my office dated October 17, 2022, identifying matters to be considered as routine agenda items, together with the corrections, additions, abstentions, and no votes that have been noted by our amazing clerk. I will entertain a motion to approve all items contained on the routine agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The routine agenda is adopted. The first item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 1, Department of Audits, Audit Reports. The first report is the biannual financial audit of the Law Department for the fiscal years ending June 30th, 2021 and 2020. The board is requested to note receipt of the audit, and at this time I'll ask Mr. Josh Pash, the city auditor, and his team to walk us through their findings.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, and honorable members of the board. My name is Josh Pash. I am the city auditor. I am here to present the biannual performance audit, Department of Law. See if the slides are up there. Okay, I will begin. Oh, there we go. Next slide, please. For the outline, we are covering, I will go over the audit objective and scope, the methodology, a summary of findings, and then the status of prior findings. Next slide, please. Our objective was to evaluate the Department of Law's monitoring compliance with goals for the MBE and WE programs, and then also to follow up on prior findings. And we are looking at fiscal years 21 and 20. Next slide, please. What our methodology was, we looked over the Baltimore City Code that is relevant to MBE and WB goals. We also interviewed key Department of Labor individuals to make sure we had an up-to-date understanding of processes. We analyzed whether the MBU office complied with those policies, rules, and regulations. And then we also evaluated design of controls, internal controls, the processes in place, and then we looked at the prior findings. And then we also reviewed management responses to those findings and to the prior findings. And then we looked at the changes to the scorecards and budget book related to the findings. Next slide, please. For the first finding, we noted that MBU does not follow all of the relevant Baltimore City codes requirements to monitor compliance with goals of the MBE program. We noted that the MBU contacts prime contractors and subcontractors to obtain supporting documentation for compliance with the MBE goals, and this occurs when the Board of Estimates has an action related to those contracts or to those companies. We noted that there is no process to proactively track and monitor the status of the contracts and achievement of MBEW goals, which is required by the Baltimore City Code. Next slide, please. When looking into the cause of this, MBU responded that it's the responsibility of the agency that has the contract and administering those contracts to monitor those goals. However, we noticed that the regulation gives MBU the authority to enforce and require contracting agencies to submit written reports on compliance, and that they are not requiring those reports. We also noted that there's no citywide monitoring of MBU compliance for all city contracts, which again is part of the regulation. Next slide, please. We looked at basically the requirements of the code and noted if they were being followed or not. So the office is to establish MBE and WE participation goals, and we found that they are doing that. We noted that they are annually to review the MBE and WE participation on all contracts and used to evaluate the program, and we noticed that they are not doing that. We did note that the office issued a calendar year 2020 annual report, however, that did not report the MBE and WE participation goals. We looked at whether city agencies are submitting on an annual basis a written report of their MBE and WB efforts, and they are not doing that. Next slide. We looked at if each contracting agency, the agency contracting with the vendor, are submitting statistics and documentation, and they're not doing that. We looked at the term of the contract and saw if they were monitoring that. We noticed that that was not being done. There is a ability of the office to require contractors, bidders, and agencies to submit reports documents to determine compliance, and that is also not being done. Next slide, please. We noted that the contracting agency is required to keep accurate records for the MBE and W goals, and that is not being done. And then we noted that the office, the MBU office, is to submit an annual report to the mayor and city council toward the utilization goals and those effectiveness, and that is not being done. Next. Okay, summary of recommendations. The recommendations are for MBU to implement a process to track and monitor those contracts and the MB and W goals on a regular basis, and to report that. And then also to use the authority given to them to enforce the contracting agencies to maintain that adequate documentation and to submit those reports verifying that to the MBU, and that the MBU should retain those documentation and support. Next slide, please. The next section was looking at the prior year findings. We looked at Service 862, and during the previous audit, we noticed that the Public Information Act, there was a requirement that they, MBU track the percentage of PIAs that are answered on time, and we noted this is not implemented. We did note that the city did start a new PIA process in August of 22, and that they have 3 pilot agencies: Department of Housing and Community Development, Department of Public Works, and Department of Transportation, which is a piece, but the process is new and hasn't been fully implemented or actually fully designed. The next, we looked at Service 869, which is the application of initial review turnaround time. And that is when MBU gets an application for MBE certification, and we found that that was partially implemented. We noted that they have established procedures, but the procedures do not provide guidance and direction to employees for tracking, monitoring, reporting performance measures, and maintaining documentation. And this was related to the prior audit for the cause there, and is based on succession planning. Due to turnover, a lot of processes were lost, and that was part of the recommendation of the previous audit. For Service 861, number of lawsuits handled, we found that was implemented. For Service 869, we looked at the number of applications approved, and we noted that that was partly implemented. One of the recommendations was to improve the tracking system, and that they had, in fact, created a more effective system, a fully digital process. However, there were not formal procedures for the review of that data, and so therefore what we found in the previous audit was there was not consistency there. For Service 862, percent of bills reviewed on time. We noted this was partially implemented. In the prior year audit, they were using a Word document to track. We noticed that they moved to an Excel spreadsheet to record and track dates, and they provided us the raw data of that information. However, the information they provided did not show the calculations, and we actually had to run the calculations of percentage of bills reviewed on time ourselves. And so it was partially implemented because they had improved the process. However, there was no calculation by them showing their statistics. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Auditor. At this time, are there any questions or concerns for members of the board to Mr. Auditor?
Chief, no, for him.
You have a quick?
Do we want to let Chief Lundy speak?
Yeah, we're going to call him up, but
Okay.
let's
Well, my
stay-
first one is for Chief Lundy.
making sure we're good.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Auditor. At this time, we're going to have Chief Lundy, as well as, I believe there's someone else from the law department that might present with you.
Yes, we also have Chief Salisbury here
Yeah,
as
if
well.
if he can come up if he wants to, it's up to you guys. Floor's yours.
Thank you. Good morning, honorable members of the board. I just have a brief presentation to kind of give an overview of both the MBU office and the status of our responses to the findings of the audit. Obviously, MBU has several duties. We're primarily certifying minority and women-owned businesses, maintaining a directory of certified businesses, assisting those businesses by providing efforts to increase participation, investigating any violations that may be found, and ensuring that we have the necessary forms as they go through the procurement and bid process to comply with the title. Maintaining statistics on the progress of the agencies as the auditor noticed, recommending to you all, the city officials, further policies to implement these goals, monitoring contractors throughout the duration of the contract, and certifying compliance before matters come before this honorable board for approval. Currently in our organization, we're really comprised of contract compliance, certification, investigations, administrative support, outreach, and development. We do have several vacant positions at this time. These are positions that we were fortunate enough to get a budget enhancement last budget, and we're in the process of working through the administrative process to get those positions listed in the near future. B2G is something that we have gone live with for renewal and certification applications. This is now an online process that's within the system where you can do everything there. You can save your application. We are giving now more reminders. Something that we've run into since we had an unfortunate crash in our prior system was that we could not give MBEs and WBs proper notification that their renewal was upcoming and they would be expiring. The new system is going to be able to give several automated reminders over the course of 6 months to ensure that no one falls out of their certification status without properly knowing. And they can also do any sort of updates regarding the contract, their contact information themselves within the system now. And this is the directory itself is now much more user-friendly. We did just actually complete the process with B2G of deduping our certification directory. So the number that was previously reported is quite a bit higher than what we now have. But this is a historical problem we've had in the prior directory that we could not actually track how many were certified, how many duplicates we have of those certifications, and when people were past that renewal date, they were not able to automatically fall out of the system. Now, if somebody does not get in a renewal application timely, they are going to automatically actually fall out of the system. Oops, excuse me for one moment. Give me 1 second. Do you know how to assist me? I got an annotation that came up and now I can't get out of it. I don't know either. It asked me for annotation and now.
It seems like maybe it's,
There we go. Maybe, can I get rid of that annotate?
yeah, there you go.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Apologies. And then also with outreach and events in the new system, we are able to communicate directly with the certified directory. We're able to now see those subsets, so we can do that geographically. So when we talk about local businesses, city businesses, we can do outreach just to those people certified in the city. We can boil that down further to people that are in telecommunications, people that do concrete work, whatever would have you. So we're really going to be able to do more particularized outreach to ensure that we're getting people in the areas that we actually need. And one of the additional benefits we have in B2G is we also contain in that directory all of the MDOT certified businesses. So when contractors are doing business with the city, they can also identify MDOT businesses. And for MBU, one of the benefits we're going to have is be able to do great outreach to people that we know are already certified in those areas that we need in the city. So that's an added bonus that we have. So specifically turning to our action plan to respond to the finding of the lack of citywide contract monitoring, As you know, we are in the process of implementing the B2G contract compliance module. As I spoke of, we already have it for the certification, outreach, and directory. This is the other piece that will now allow us to do citywide contract monitoring. This unfortunately has been delayed, and this is really a deficiency historically that has been due to staffing or lack of actual resources to do that monitoring, but more so an effective software such as this where we don't have to have as much human input to get that. So all of the contracts over $50,000 that are pending board review right now get compliance reviews, but what we're going to have in B2G is all that data is going to be entered there so we can see ongoing monitoring. So we could look at contracts on whatever basis. We can give our staff ticklers to look at a contract every month, every 2 months, every quarter to see that progress. So we don't have to have that historical look back. So we don't have everything come before the board and you go, well, how come you didn't do better participation? We'll be able to identify those much earlier. Last fall, we did full MBU training about our current procedures, requirements of the code, and how they should do better contract compliance. One of the things we're looking forward to is once we do get that B2G software in place, we're going to do another round of training as to how the agency can assist us. One of the biggest requirements is going to be that all of the primes are going to have to enter their payments to their subcontractors, and every subcontractor is going to have to verify those payments within the system. So it's really going to give that transparent visibility. And when we have those conflicts, it is going to give a trigger that should be seen at MBU, but also at the agency, so we can look into the underlying matters of what is going on and why is there a discrepancy. And the important thing to remember is the code does require the agencies, pursuant to Article 5, Section 2870, to look at all contracting opportunities and evaluate them in an effort to divide and segment the total requirements of the contract for reasonable opportunities for participation from MWBEs. And furthermore, in 2868, it requires the head of every agency or their designee to assume responsibility for ensuring compliance with this. Along those same lines, we are going to be requesting that the agencies submit written reports regarding their efforts under the program for fiscal year 22. This is a requirement of the code in 2850 that all city agencies submit to MBU on an annual basis a written report on the efforts made under the subsection. So we're really going to be looking at, from the agency's perspective, the efforts that they have made to increase participation. This will be a great litmus for us to see what the agencies themselves are doing, efforts that we may not even be aware of at MBU, and then that will be able to be juxtaposed against the actual data of the figures when we get to that point with the monitoring. And this is really going to give us an understanding of where within our enterprise we may have some lagging points of agencies that need to do a better job of looking for that segmentation and participation. So we are going to be making that request upcoming for that further evaluation. We are also going to be providing an annual report. As noted, the last annual report was done on a calendar basis. We are going to be transitioning now to a fiscal year report that is going to more coincide with obviously our budget years and really be able to show the progress of the city. As we've noted, there is not the citywide monitoring. We are not in place with B2G at this time, so I'm not going to be able to give you all of the percentages for each agency, but I'm surely looking forward to doing that in the next annual report for MBU. And then also, this is also prompted, this is something that was on our mind, but the auditor's report is definitely put a spotlight on our need to revise our SOPs. We did recently implement those in 2021, but we actually have had so many changes to the process and improvements with the new software that there are many things that need to be fleshed out even further in the SOPs to ensure that our process is memorialized and that we can have that continuity if any new members join the office. I just want to highlight again that this finding is just based on the lack of software and personnel to monitor our duties. This is going to be further, we're going to further our development efforts as we merge with the Mayor's Office of Minority and Women's Business Development, and also as we implement the disparity study recommendations. This is a deficiency that is noted by both the auditor and the disparity study, and there is a great need for this program, but for us to continue to have those budget enhancements to allow us to do greater code compliance. We are very, very appreciative of the administration's commitment with the fiscal year 23 $500,000 budget enhancement. It was granted in part. We are going to be bringing on additional compliance officers, investigator, and also an outreach coordinator that have been approved in our pending posting as noted in the org chart. And we are going to again be seeking additional compliance officers to make sure we can do additional monitoring as we move forward. And with that, I will turn over to Chief Salisbury to walk us through the additional findings from the prior audit report.
Thanks, Chief Lundy. Mr. Council President, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, there were just two additional audit findings that had not been fully implemented. I'll just quickly go over those. One of those related to the number of Public Information Act requests, the percentage of Public Information Act requests, and how those are tracked. That's something that's ultimately has been turned over to the city's data officer, so we'd sort of defer questions to that. We'll be working with BBMR to remove that as a law department performance measure, because that's something that'll that's not a function that the law department will be serving.
That's turned over to who now?
To the chief data officer, I think it was Justin Elsas. And the second thing is the bill tracking technology. We just wanted to mention our advice and opinions group is exploring using Smartsheets. They had been working with a Word document, then they moved to an Excel spreadsheet. I think that Smartsheets, there's just some more functionality that'll be able to provide, in addition to tracking all the work that they're doing, also being able to provide some data so that, if it was being looked at by an audit in the future, they could provide more data about what sort of improvements and enhancements were being worked out with the bill tracking technology. So with that, we'll turn it over for any questions.
Thank you. I have one question, Chief Lundy. Did I hear that the agency goal calculation or reporting, I assume that because B2G is not fully functioning at this moment, that we won't be able to see those stats until 2024?
That's
what
correct.
we're saying?
Yes, I'm hoping to have statistics sooner than that. Really,
if we wait on the system, we won't have it till 2024, right?
No. I was alluding to it would be contained in my next report, next annual report.
So you're gonna but you want to do the annual reports at budget?
So I have an annual report that I'm in the process of drafting that will be done in under 60 days. Okay. So that's going to be coming for fiscal year 22. All right. We don't have the tracking in place yet due to workday complications. We now actually have identified a manual workaround that we're exploring with the vendor now to pull down all of our active contracts with goal monitoring and ensure that those get into the system. And then as we move forward, look to the Board of Estimates agenda of everything that's coming through with new goal requirements and just ensure that those are added in and be able to start the monitoring. Because we originally had envisioned just pulling that data and having a feed from Workday of all the contracts with goals going into B2G. So this is now the workaround that we're optimistic that we'll be able to get that done within a matter of months. But we're at the beginning of that process.
Understood. So this will be your last annual report outside of the fiscal cycle?
This one will be the conversion to the fiscal cycle. So this will be.
So the next one will be. It's not in a couple months. It's going to be specific to the budget process. When you say the fiscal cycle, I'm assuming you're presenting it around the budget time.
Yes. So I wasn't necessarily saying it would be at the budget time. So the new report that's coming is going to be from the last fiscal year. So the one I'm authoring now will cover the last fiscal year we just finished. And then when we get to the next report, I'm optimistic that we will have some goal monitoring in place during this fiscal year that I'll be able to give you some figures on.
Gotcha. And when is that expected?
Right now, we're still working out the timing. My hope now that we're looking and exploring a workaround is that we will have this in place for no later than February. But I'm really pushing to get this done as soon as possible, because as soon as we have goal monitoring in place, really within, after 45 days, 60 days, we'll have people that have been entering their payments in there, and we'll already be able to start to give you some understanding of participation on those contracts. We won't be able to get a good agency feel until we can get everything in there and have some period of monitoring, just in fairness, because there may be, the first month or 2 months that we look at it, there may be shortfalls in participation that aren't historically showing everything that's been done at the agency.
Gotcha. So realistically, I guess back to the original question, really 2024 is when we should be able to see an agency level snapshot, and the data disaggregated by agency associated with the MWBE calculations.
We will definitely have it by then. I'm optimistic that it's actually a 2023
Okay.
issue that we're able to resolve quickly.
All right. Thank you. Are there any other questions of members of the board? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Chief Lundy, for all this great work. I think all of us understand the situation that you inherited and you came in with building the systems. You can't track stuff because things are written by paper, and we know that was a citywide issue in this transition to Workday. But for all of the things that the auditor and the disparity study have laid out for us in the last few weeks, and they've both been great and very detailed. Moving to B2G and the systems that you're putting in place, and with the additional people, do you believe that those are the main things that you need in be able to complete those recommendations from both the auditor and this disparity study?
That is definitely key. You've really pinpointed the critical elements. It's really getting into that system to have that real-time tracking, or at least within a month of the payments, and also having some additional support to be able to do better compliance and investigating of our ongoing contract work.
And then just a follow-up, because you talked about the work that you're doing now when folks are applying to be certified. Can you walk us through the kind of support that you guys give to those individuals when they're reaching out to you about certification?
Sure thing. We've really now developed a more robust frequently asked questions. So we really flesh out what is required. Now in B2G, we also give a listing of all the documents that are required at the onset. So it's a lot easier for people to understand what they need to do. But nonetheless, if there's any questions or difficulties that they have beyond that point, we now have on the website the contact IMBU if they have a specific question. And also at B2G, when you're doing the application, you can hit the contact. It's the blue icon at the top right if you need any help and support. And either if it's system related, B2G will still assist them on that. If it's a fundamental question of how to get certified, they send that message electronically to us, and then we follow up. But we're always available to meet with anyone that has any questions or concerns throughout the process, and we do a lot of assistance in making sure people get their applications in.
Last two questions, Mr. President. Chief, talk to us about the importance that you think this merger with Minority Women Business is going to allow, not just you, but your agencies to do in search of the goals and the things that we're trying to achieve here.
Oh, it's going to be critical, because really we're now going to be able to, for one, eliminate confusion of the two offices, have a one-stop shop. We're really going to be able to work in complete collaboration for small minority and women-owned businesses. There'll be no disconnect. There'll be no things that one office is doing and we're not aware of. So just joining our forces together, we're really going to have a lot of combined resources to benefit businesses. The biggest thing that really is going to come from this is that additional outreach and development, allowing us to go to even more events and find that targeted development that I've been talking about with the NACE codes to really make sure that we eliminate, to the extent that we can, the availability waivers. The waivers that just we don't have anyone else available to offer these services. We want to find those people. And the ways are going to be really through the great network and resources that Director Taylor has already put together in his office, combined with our additional view of the MDOT businesses, and then some other things we're exploring, even with, we spoke of Chief Data Officer. I'm in conversations with him about other ways that we can even identify minority and women-owned businesses in the region that we can do additional outreach to.
And then my last question, just for the general public, walk us through the ability, if you're someone yourself in your office that are going through trying to search these things before B2G and now after it, the time that is saved in doing that.
Well, to be frank, unfortunately in the old directory, we think of Google. Just from a standpoint, when you do a search engine, you think of, you can type it lowercase, you can space it out, you can do it all caps, it's going to give you the same answer. Our directory previously, unfortunately, did not do that. if you had something like a business like R.E. Harrington, if you didn't put the periods in the right space, if you put R period, E period, but then you didn't space it, so it was a lot of difficulty in finding people in the directory. Even for myself, sometimes I would have to do 2, 3, 4 searches before I could identify who I'm looking for. I always had the diligence to want to find the business that I intend to find. I've always been concerned that the members of the public may go, well, I don't see them, or I didn't get a result. Now, it is more of that Google style, that if you lowercase capitalize, whatever way you do punctuation or spacing, you're going to find that business. So we're not going to have that problem of business not being able to be identified. And the best thing we do now is you're able to search by the NAICS codes. So when we talk about what you need to do and what services you're looking for, you can just say, hey, we need someone, I'm just going to make up the number, but 2389, it's like for concrete, you can find everybody we have certified that does that type of concrete work and really do particularized outreach. And that's something that I know is going to be critical for primes as they're getting bids in and they're looking to build out projects of who is actually available to do the specific work, not just generalized. They do electrical, what type of concrete, and that's where we're going in the city, that we have very particularized needs on our contracts, and we can't speak generally about people that exist, because oftentimes we'll say, okay, well, we have people that are certified, but once we get into the conversation with the agency, there's more particularity that comes into it that we really need to look into. So continuing those conversations, continuing to make sure we're building out and working with the agency partners as well is critical to this, but it's a far, far easier system to utilize now.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It's the first time in a long time I heard a desk phone ring, so we got to figure out how to put it on vibrate.
Mr. Comptroller?
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Okay, so we've talked a lot around this. I just want to make sure, when we point right on this, when will B2G be fully implemented? February?
Is my hope. So I'm going to be extremely frank. So we had a go live date that we were looking at based on Workday's go live of August 8th. The Workday, situation.
Oh, it was based on Workday.
Correct. It was all of our contracts and payments.
Say no
from
more,
Workday.
sir. Okay, all right.
So that's what's caused us to not really have a solid date right now.
Okay.
But with the workaround, now we're going to be reaching out to contract administration at the agencies, also procurement to make sure we have the active contract information. And we're really just going to try to build out manually as opposed to doing this with the auto feeds. And I'm very, very optimistic that we can get that done, for first calendar quarter of 23.
And so that's why you're saying in your FY23 annual report, which would be coming out like around this time or a little later next year, you'll have from February to the end of June, you'll have partial data.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then when we transition next July, that should be our first full year of monitoring. That then in that next report we can say, okay, this is the big picture for a year of agency spending, procurement, and utilization.
Okay, so that's actually where we're going to have a little bit of a race between whether your annual report will come out before audits next audit of 22-23.
I'm going to be pushing to ensure, as always, that we're not holding on to any negative findings any longer than we need to implement the solutions.
Thank you.
We definitely have the solution in sight. It's just an implementation piece that we're at now.
So, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, I just want to take this opportunity to publicly thank Chief Lundy. He and his team were incredibly responsive and completely forthcoming in terms of sharing information with the audits team. And we really appreciate what you've been able to do with the dearth of resources that you've had. And we're very supportive of the request for more resources.
Thank you so much, Mr. Comptroller. I appreciate that. I appreciate all your partnership. And Auditor Pash and his team were absolutely delightful to work with. And they made the process painless. So I appreciate that.
Okay, you hear that, everybody? They're painless. They're easy to work with. Just remember that. Just connect with audits. They want to help. They're there to help you. I did have some other questions about findings that I'm not sure I can ask you why agencies haven't been submitting annual reports to you, but I'm not sure that you can you tell us why?
You should be able to.
Yeah, from everything I've ascertained, it's a combination of a lack of awareness from the agency side that is a requirement, and a lack of the ask and request from MBU for that requirement. So it is something that now we're
Okay.
surely going to be moving forward with.
Okay.
And
So-
I am going to be making that ask to the agencies before the end of this calendar year. That is upcoming to get that information.
The mayor wants to say something.
They haven't been told to do it, and now they will.
Yes, sir.
Okay, it was unclear whether whether you need to proactively tell them or whether the law requires them to, right?
Yeah, I think it is a code requirement that this has not been amplified and brought to everyone.
But you're going to be the person who's going to remind them of the code requirement?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha, okay. I think that's all I have for MBU. I did want to ask some questions about the repeat finding on page 6 about the Public Information Act process, so
Before we
maybe.
go to that,
Okay.
just real quick, when was the last annual from MBU?
I believe it was a calendar 2020 annual report, if I recall correctly.
Okay. So maybe Chief Salisbury for this one. According to what you were reporting, the law department is handing off the process for tracking PIA responses to the chief data officer.
Correct.
Okay. But this process didn't begin until August of 2022.
Yeah, I don't know that historically there really was a tracking for citywide PIA requests. I think that the point that the law department was making at the outset is, the law department is there to provide legal advice to agencies as they're responding to their own PIA requests. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the law department to be tracking that data across the city, and that was the impetus behind, I think, creating the centralized role to do that. I know that work has begun. I understand that the chief data officer is working on that now, but they'd be in a better position to answer specific questions about where we are in making progress on that effort.
So let me frame this in a certain way, and I'm happy to be corrected if this isn't factually correct. An audit 2 years ago found that the law department wasn't properly tracking PIA requests. The law department's response, either directly at the time or just the feeling of the law department, was we shouldn't be tracking, it shouldn't be us tracking it. And then nothing happened until we came back to do the next round of audits and reminded the law department of the prior finding.
I don't know if that chronology is exactly right. I think that the administration had already been
Looking
thinking
for an
about
alternative.
and been working on this prior to when the audit team came back around to ask us about this.
So sure.
So I actually previously did the MPIA responses on behalf of the city and also for the police department. And I just want to offer that although that was the prior finding, agencies are tracking their own MPIA responses. They don't always come to the law department for legal advice. So an agency such as DPW has a great, robust MPIA process where they go ahead and give, all sorts of data that doesn't require any sort of legal analysis or redactions. So they just do that independently. So we have several agencies that have that type of robust process. And Hillary Ruley, who I worked with previously in this matter, and Elaine DiPietro's group, we've done a lot of trainings and literature to the agencies to ensure that they're aware of what they should do and when to reach out for the assistance. So it's something that's kind of an on-demand legal advice situation that as needed. So we're not always aware of all of the requests, only the ones potentially that have that legal component that needed guidance.
So I'm trying to think how to phrase this. One of the things that our office found when we did a little bit of a survey of how other local governments handle this is we found that for some reason in Maryland, the city along with the larger counties do have a fairly decentralized way of handling this. But if you look nationally, it is actually far more common that the law department for a given city coordinates the process, whether that means that there are, we have the general counsel from DPW here. Several of the larger agencies have their own counsel that are embedded in the agency, and therefore, on one sort of structural administrative level, they're not coming back to the law department in order to get the legal advice they need to answer an MPIA request. But on the other hand, it has been made plain to me many times over the decades that even a lawyer embedded in an agency is a member of the law department, just embedded in the agency. And so all of the legal advice that is being given by the law department.
That's completely correct.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to differentiate is the requests that just have no legal component. So like a 311, people will say, what's been going on my street? I know people have been complaining about this. Can you give me all the 311 complaints regarding this stoplight or the stop sign being missing or the pothole repair? There are things that there's no confidential information. There's nothing that's recognized by the MPIA that would allow those things to be withheld. So those just go out, even without a great general counsel like Mr. Ingram. Okay. He doesn't need to get involved in that process. It's just something that the staff will go ahead and take care of.
And so then going back to what Mr. Salisbury is saying in terms of how this is going to work going forward, then now is, because, and I recognize that it's important to ask this question based on our exchange around the agencies reporting to MVU. So are the agencies going to report their numbers to the chief data officer, or is the chief data officer going to go to every agency and say, give me your numbers?
I think we're creating a platform so that we would have the type of citywide record, is my understanding, so that we would be able to see all of the requests, not just anything seeking legal advice, and it would be like a platform, and that's why I think we're needing the assistance of
a data person.
Yeah.
I was under the impression that the strategy would be that that's the golden source, so all the requests would just come through them and they would send it out to the agencies. That way, there's nothing that's missed. I mean, it's nothing for someone in one of these agencies to receive a request from the general public or from the media, and like you said, it's pretty standard information. They just provide it, and I saw that disconnect quick when you were talking about that earlier. So I think that if we are to do this, the way to improve the data that we're presenting associated with the transparency regarding these PIAs is that for that to be the one-stop shop, and that way they can vet all the numbers.
Well, I know they're still in the process. We'll definitely.
So when we said that we were switching it from the law department to that agency, I automatically assumed that's why we were doing that. If we're not doing that, we're still finding ourselves in the same issue that we've had where, the left hand might not be talking to the right.
So my understanding is that the reason why we're transitioning to the chief data officer is for like some sort of overall data resource that would house all of the requests, and that it's not a proper BBMR measure of the law department's performance regarding requests that don't necessarily even come to the law department and may be handled completely at like DPW, for example.
And that could be the same case with the data officer. That's what I'm saying. Like we're recreating the same issue. If the data officer is not the sole source responsible for collecting it and then vetting it out and then helping to report it out.
So that is it. I think that is the way it should.
Okay, that's what I assumed.
My understanding is that yes, the chief data officer not so much will take all the requests, but he will have some sort of platform repository to
where it
list
comes
every
in.
MPIA.
And the expectation is for the MPIAs to come in through that source and then to go out.
I don't know if it's.
I mean, you have to make it that strict,
Yeah,
or we're gonna be just creating the wheel again of this person has a relationship with this comms director. It's an easy request. It's no point in me going through this process. I can just get them the information and kind of be done with it, right? There's no way of getting ahead of that unless you have a sole source of information coming in.
I think that's a great point. I mean, to the extent that we can create a portal or repository for all the requests, I think that would maybe be a way to go. I know in the past there's been a hesitance to do that due to the multiple custodians of records throughout the city. And we've imposed that when you send something to one location, it's not the same as the other. So someone cannot send something to Director Mitchell and really be making a health department request.
Correct. So that's why having an independent portal, that the expectation is the media, the general public, just goes through that portal, provides the MPIA request through that portal, and then from there it's vetted out. That's the one-stop shop where we're understanding all MPIAs that are coming in.
Yeah, I think this is excellent feedback, and this is something we'll definitely take into account as we're working with Chief Data Officer to build out this system to ensure that it's closer to what you all think it would be a good process for citywide monitoring.
Well, I just want to, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
I think, Mr. President, you bring up a great point. I think that it's a both and, though, because I think that we'll have that central system, but you and I both know we're going to have, you know, some reporters, some folks who are just simply never they're going to go around. But the key is that when they do reach out to the agency person, that the agency person automatically sends them back over to the portal and to the data officer, so that we don't have people going around the system. And that's the thing that we will build in to make sure that everyone works that way.
I want to make sure that we're talking about the same kind of requests, because you mentioned, you know, a community person might just call somebody, an agency, and ask a question.
I was speaking of a letter, so all written
Right.
requests. Nothing is an MPIA request unless it's a formal written request.
There we go. Okay, so right there's the times that people just call you and ask you for information, and you just give it to them, and then there's a formal request for information, and this is what we're talking about, both in terms of what's already happening in terms of asking the Chief Data Officer to track, and where we may be going in terms of setting up a platform so that there's one unified point of contact that, so it would, so somebody goes onto this portal and says, you know, I'd like to get all the city's information on X. I get that the Chief Data Officer would set that portal up, and that would make a lot of sense. And I get that the statistics available from that portal would be tracked and presented to appropriate bodies by the Chief Data Officer. Who's actually running the portal? Because the Chief Data Officer probably is not the best person to be reading the individual requests and routing them to where they should go.
Mr. President, if I may, what I think we should do here is set up further conversations with everyone about what's going to happen, and so, because we'll be here talking about this one all day if we keep going down the rabbit hole. But we'll make sure that the law department, the Chief Data Officer, the administrator set up the briefings with you and the President to make sure that you guys get the understanding of where they're going with this system that we all know that we need and have needed for some time.
Fine with me.
And Chief DePietro would be critical for that conversation, because it's her group from the legal standpoint at the law department that would provide any sort of legal guidance on these requests.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions?
At the grave risk of prolonging this, just remember, when you check other states, cities in other states, they have a different statute. And our statute is unique in a couple respects. I'm not going to say any more. I'm not going to answer how it's unique. Just, you got to bear that in mind.
That's fair.
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor. Any additional questions, concerns? Thank you so much for your time today. We're going to jump right along to the next.
Two.
No, still page one. We're still on page one. Our amazing auditor, Mr. Pash, if you could come up. You're going to present now on the permit process for fiscal years June 30th, 2021 and 20. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Honorable Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, Honorable Board members. My name is Josh Pash, and I'm here to present the Department of Planning permit process. The permit process specifically related to the Department of Planning. And just a side note, I appreciate all the attention that my audit is getting.
That's what it's for, right? Yeah. But we before you begin, the mayor was like, normally we have a presentation like an actual PowerPoint, so we always appreciate your preparedness of coming and literally laying out so we can see it. There's a lot of times we get information and it's hard to kind of vet through it in our brains while people are talking, but you put it on the slide in a very digestible way, so we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Response on one today, too.
Yeah, we.
Next slide, please. Here's our agenda, similar to the previous audit. Next page, please. So our objectives for this audit were to determine Department of Planning's permit review process for effectiveness and efficiency and effectiveness, and then to follow up on prior findings. We noted in this audit significant systems. There is an e-plan system, and to define that, DHCD has an online system used to process complex permits that require specific documentation. And so this will be more complex permits, example, building designs, site plans, environmental analysis. And then they also have an e-permit system. This is also run by DHCD, and this is for more simple plans that do not require as much analysis. For example, putting up a deck or fencing and just meeting those requirements to get a permit. We noted the related parties here was Departments of Planning, and we noted that they have approximately 28,000 of the 30,000 permit applications that are received annually, the 30,000 which is submitted into the system, and then 28,000 approximately which are applicable to the Department of Planning. Department of Housing and Community Development owns the system, and when the request for a permit comes in, they are the ones who get it and then route it to the relevant agency. For the scope, we are looking at fiscal years 21 and 20. We looked at compliance with COMAR guidelines and city ordinances, and then we looked at historical reporting, and then we looked at the process and procedures, and then we looked at monitoring of those permits for accuracy and completeness, and then we also looked at the system access and were the roles appropriate for those, was the access appropriate for the roles. Next slide. For finding one, we looked at the historical permit data, and we noticed that it overstates the actual turnaround time for DOP's permit review, making them look worse than they are. And when we looked into that, we noted that the DHCD e-permit system has key fields capturing dates, and the date of completion is also the date that it's put on hold when they get specific, when they need more information from the person submitting the permit. And then basically what happens is that hold time is not captured in the metric, and Department of Planning is, I guess, held responsible for that, that time that's requested from the third party. We also looked at historical permit reports to see what the turnaround time as a whole was, and those historical reports were not available, which as a whole, they could not report on those performance metrics. We looked at the system. We noted that new employees cannot obtain appropriate access to the e-plans and e-permit system. We talked to DHCD and to BSIT, and they found that the system was designed by a previous employee. That employee left, and the ability to add new employees was lost with that transition. They did develop manual workarounds, and we also noted that new employees could be added to the e-permit system, but not the e-plan system. But however, with the e-permit system, they can't be assigned to the employee, and so basically the Department of Planning person who receives them in has to basically inform the relevant employee that that's there, and then they have to look it up. Next slide, please. We also looked at the review process for the permits that come in, and we noticed that when they're assigned to a staff, the staff performs that review and submits it, and there is not an established review process, secondary review. When we talked to the DOP staff, they noted that they get a lot of them, and we identified that. But the risk was, without that secondary review, at least on a sample basis, there is a risk of errors and omissions and incorrect assessment being given. So when we looked at the overall causes, The e-permit system, like I said, was designed by a former employee, and the knowledge to work with that system was lost. And then for the e-plan system, we know that was procured by a third party, but that system was also managed by the former employee, and the know-how was also lost there. And then regarding the secondary view, basically the management for Department of Planning is focused on turning around the 28,000, and did note that the secondary review for each one would significantly impact operations.
That's crazy.
Looking at the overall risks, so basically, we noted that any performance metrics as a whole that are being reported can't be supported, which basically in the budget book, those numbers are, I would say, not reliable and can't be verified. And then there's an increased risk that those reviews may be inaccurate because of the assignment to employees. And then for the manual workarounds, that was just an inefficiency. So for the one system, the person that's assigning has to actually tell the staff who's doing the review what the number is. For the other system, they actually have to download it and send the whole file to the people doing the review, and then get it back, and then enter it back in the system. For recommendations for finding 1 and 2, the recommendation was to correct those logic errors, basically bring up the systems so that they would be more effective and efficient, and then to also improve and find a way to report accurate historical data, and then to put documentation around the process so that when employees do transition, they will still be able to meet the objectives and have that overall monitoring in place. For finding 3, we recommended that DOP put together a secondary review, and we do recognize that having a secondary review for each permit would be also inefficient. And so through discussion with DOP, to have a sampling, just to have touch base to see that periodically and through a certain number that the staff is doing them accurately and correctly, and then using that sample basis to get that comfort. And then also if they found ones that weren't being done correctly, they would be able to work with that staff to educate and train. For the prior findings, Service 763, which is comprehensive planning and resource management, average number of days for basic permit review. All of the prior findings basically fall right into the reportings which we already presented. We did request documentation to validate the performance metrics, and that was not provided to us. And then the second prior finding, we noted as partially implemented. This was related to the climate action plan. What the finding was in the previous was when the cap was reported in the budget book, it was reported as a cumulative over the years. For example, if the prior year they had completed, let's say 20%, and they had achieved another 2%. In the current year, they would be reporting 22%, which was agreed by all parties, a little misleading. So the reason it was partially implemented is we noted that they did come up with a methodology to report it by annual year so that you could see the process by annual year. However, when we tried to validate those results, requesting documentation, that was not provided to us. And so we're not able to validate what improvements were made. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. At this time, are there any questions or concerns from members of this board?
Planning. All mine are for planning.
No plan.
I have a question.
Nothing for the auditor? Thank you.
I do.
Oh, you do? Oh,
Yes.
Comptroller.
Do you know when the former employee left HCD?
I know it was prior to our audit.
Prior to the conducting of the audit, or prior to the period of time that the audit covers?
Prior to the scope of the audit.
Prior to okay, so before the beginning of fiscal 20.
That's my understanding.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I missed the recommendation that we should discourage agencies from having individual employees develop critical systems for city operations and business, and if they do so, we should have a succession plan in place if they leave. I missed that. Was that part of the recommendation? I'm joking, Mr.
That was
Lydie.
part of the policies and procedures to create that succession plan, and then that would also be including how to use the system.
In line with your brain as an auditor, you answered that question. Thank you. We're going to call up planning. Who do we have?
Actually, before,
Oh, you have another question?
well, it was more of a question of planning doesn't own the system. The system is owned by DHCD, and BSIT has been trying to help. Is anybody from DHCD or BSIT here? Because I want to know why it's been more than 2 years since the person who was able to control this fairly well-used process left, and nobody has done anything to fix that in 2 years. We can ask planning, but it's not planning system. They're one of the users. Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Auditor.
Council President, this is Jason Hester from DHCD.
Hey,
I'm on
there we go.
line.
Hey, Deputy Commissioner, the floor is yours.
Okay. In reference to the e-permits and e-plan system, both systems are fully operational and have been fully operational. The employee that designed those, I think he left in early 21. But this DHD worked with BCIT. They have put together a team that does support both systems. We issue well over 30,000 permits a year and over 3,000 plans. This particular piece, which is important to Department of Planning's audit process or their metrics that they report on for outcome-based budgeting, and one was we were not aware of this little piece. So we didn't have anybody working on it or focused on it. And then we are in the process of implementing an evaluation of both of the permitting and planning process so that we can bring on new systems. It's just that this particular one report that is needed to fill in this metric doesn't exist.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Comptroller, before you even say anything, I'll just say this. Within the next 2 months, we will come back to you and the President about how we're going to fix the issue.
Thank you.
Mr. Director, I don't think we need to hear from you, but the mic is yours if you would like.
I'm fine. If-
We have other things for planning past this.
You have another question?
Yeah, because there was a later
Comptroller
finding.
has another question. I apologize, Mr. Comptroller.
No, that's okay. Good morning.
Morning.
I'll give you a little preface. We're asking about greenhouse gases. The assessment indicates that planning revised the methodology used to report results for the Climate Action Plan. It also notes that the agency never provided data to support the impact of recommendations to reduce greenhouse gases and the aggregate outcome of the plan, despite audits requesting this information multiple times since March of 2022.
Good controller. Yeah, I was going to start by sort of giving a high-level summary of what's happened in the planning department through COVID in the last 2 years. We did lose 3 positions at the onset, and over 25% of our staff turned over, including several division managers. So we do owe your department a written report
Okay.
on many of this.
Lose being abolished or vacant?
We lost 3 positions that were vacant. We've regained one. We will regain a second next year. But the third one is in the Land Use and Urban Design division, which is where most of the permits.
So they weren't abolished, they're vacant.
They were vacant and abolished
Oh.
During COVID, at the onset of COVID. So we've gotten, we'll say, 1.5 back. We'll have the other half in place by next budget year, but we still have a vacancy in the permitting system division.
Okay, so just to be clear, if the position that was tracking this data has been vacant, or so I guess what I'm trying to understand is, do you not have the data because the person who was collecting it wasn't there, or do you have it but you didn't have the person you needed to access it to give it to us?
We have not completed our written report because we've had a high level of turnover in the department, as well as some vacancies. So, for example, the director of the Office of Sustainability, which would generate that specific, is a relatively new person. We're supporting the sustainability sub-cabinet. We have a vacant position there to do that, but this person's doing essentially 2 jobs at once. So we will provide the written report. Most of the recommendations have been implemented.
Right.
With the exception that we're still working with the old permit system. So some things are a workaround, as you know. But I think they will be fully addressed, as Jason Hessler just said, when we have the new permit system.
Okay. Did Jason say when that? Well, we're going to get that. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any additional questions for the Department of Planning? Hearing and seeing none, thank you so much, Mr. Director. Both audits will be noted. Thank you so much to you and your team, as always, Mr. Auditor. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 4, City Council number 220223, concerning Downtown Management District and the Downtown Management Authority for the purpose of renewing and continuing both the Management District and the Authority. A protest was received from Ms. Lorraine Jaworski Brockmeyer. The Department of Planning recommends approval of this bill and defers the Baltimore Development Corporation. The Department of Transportation has also registered no objections. All other reports received have been favorable. At this time, I'd like to recognize Ms. Lorraine Jaworski Brockmeyer to speak on behalf of her protests. I know that the Comptroller's Office has been attempting to reach out to Ms. Brockmeyer, and I'm not sure if she was able to make it today or a representative, but we want to make sure that we call it on the agenda. So if someone is here to speak on behalf of this item, please come up before us. If not, if someone's online, if you could please unmute yourself and let us know that you're speaking on behalf of City Council Bill 220223.
Make a motion to approve, Mr. President.
At this point, there's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, and I think before we go into it, I think that, again, the Comptroller's Office has done its due diligence to try to ensure that we provide an opportunity for this protester to actually come and present or provide any additional information. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, that is not the case. This has gone through the formal Baltimore City Council process, so this is not the first time that the general public has had the ability to hear this particular issue. There's a motion as well as a second on the floor. Since it's been duly noted, at this point, I'll take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. On to the next item on non-routine agenda can be found on page 9, the Law Department Settlement Agreement and Release. This request is to approve a settlement agreement and release against the city and the Baltimore Police Department, Officer Ryan Wagner, filed by Tara Faison, as a result of a motor vehicle accident on October 12, 2019. On behalf of the Law Department, on behalf of the administration of the Law Department, we have Ms. Ebony Thompson here to present for us. So, Deputy Solicitor / Chief of Staff. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, Mr. Comptroller and honorable members of the board. These are the best way to use and consolidate our hard-working taxpayers' dollars. So happy to serve. This is a request to approve the settlement of a lawsuit. The settlement is in the amount of $36,000. It's against the city and Baltimore Police Department Officer Ryan Wagner, filed by Ms. Faison as a result of a motor vehicle accident on October 12, 2019 on Greenmount Avenue at or near its intersection with East 30th Street in Baltimore City. Officer Wagner was traveling northbound in the 2900 block of Greenmount Avenue when traffic started to slow ahead of him. He applied the brakes on his vehicle but stated in discovery that they failed to engage and continued forward until he struck the vehicle in front of him, operated by a third party, who was then pushed into the bumper of the plaintiff's vehicle and struck her vehicle. Minor damage was sustained by all vehicles. No medic was requested. However, plaintiff produced in excess of $20,000 in medical fees and initially made a demand of $60,000. The law department was able to get the plaintiff to accept a $36,000 settlement that allows the city to avoid the cost of further litigation proceeding to trial and a potential adverse jury verdict. While the officer states his brakes failed to engage for this particular accident, I did want to update the board that the administration remains diligent in providing and formulating an accident review policy and has assembled a group from the Mayor's Office, Office of the Labor Commissioner, Risk Management, Law, Finance, and the Department of Human Resources to advance this effort. The goal is, of course, to formulate a policy that will drastically reduce the amount of money the city has to pay for preventable accidents. At this time, I'll take any questions that the board may have, sir.
Thank you so much. At this time, are there any questions for the Law Department Administration from this board? Hearing and seeing none, we appreciate that. I'll entertain a motion if there is one.
Approval.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. On to our next item. It can be found on pages 70 through 72, Department of Public Works. This request is to approve the execution of First Amendment of the consent order and reimbursement agreement with the State of Maryland and the Department of Environment regarding the operation of Back River Wastewater Treatment Plant. On behalf of DPW, we have Mr. Richard Luna to speak on behalf, we have the council, Mr. Ingram, to speak on behalf of DPW. Mr. Ingram, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Council President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, and honorable members of the Board of Estimates. Today, I'm requesting the board's approval of the amendment to extend the time of the consent order and revised directive regarding the Back River Wastewater Treatment Plant. First, I would like to mention both the Back River and Patapsco wastewater treatment plants are compliant with their stringent effluent permit parameters. The DPW staff are moving in haste to address the remaining operational issues. On behalf of DPW, we and the staff would like to thank Mayor Scott and his administration for his and his leadership's keen support to ensure that the agency moves toward full compliance. Even more, the federal court noted that the leadership of your colleague on this board, Dr. Mitchell, and his DPW team for responding in haste to instituting enterprise-wide changes to facilitate responsive actions to issues at the Back River Wastewater Treatment Plant and the Patapsco plant. I'm here today to ask this honorable board's approval of the amendment of the consent order of the consent decree and the reimbursement agreement to continue Baltimore City's tireless work and effort in prioritizing the health and safety of our waterways, to continue striving to be best in class at DPW. DPW is moving toward greater stewardship and protection of this waterways, and of this city, and of the enterprise changes and the successes of the projects that it's done thus far, such as producing a strategic plan to address violations, instituting and staffing an enterprise compliance program called the Environmental Regulatory Compliance Section to ensure quality assurance and controls. DPW mandated a full assessment via a gap analysis to address the wastewater plant issues. This administration provided true investment in its facilities and its people. And we've seen those positive results. For example, with the Headwork project, it was a major sewer upgrade project that immediately reduced sewer overflows and the volumes. Even more in 2021, the Headwork project reduced sewer overflows by at least 64%. That's equal to averting 250 million gallons of raw sewage from the bay. And DPW is working to ensure Headwork reaches its full potential by removing as much as 9,000 tons of settlement material in its 8-mile pipeline by the end of 2023, thereby reducing even more sewer overflows, which will positively impact our waterways. And even more, the return of the mechanical street sweeping, which not only creates cleaner communities, but assists the city in complying with its federal mandate to prevent trash and unwanted nutrients from entering our waterways, which further improves our water quality. Due to these successes and the leadership of the city, the Back River Wastewater Treatment Plant was able to get back into compliance with its effluent parameters within 3 months of executing the original consent order and reimbursement agreement. And it's still compliant today with those parameters. That's a testament to the leadership of this community and our administration. And so now, Patapsco is compliant with its effluent parameters as well. These compliance efforts are a testament to DPW staff and the collaboration with MDE and MES. The federal court denied Blue Water Baltimore's preliminary injunction motion because it has neither shown that it's likely to suffer irreparable harm in the absence of a preliminary injunction, nor the balance of hardships weighed in favor of granting the relief. And that was due to the leadership of DPW staff, the leadership of Mayor Scott and his administration, and the hardworking people of DPW and MES. And so we request this extension continue those efforts. And so I'm here today to ask this honorable board's approval for the amendment of the consent decree and reimbursement agreement to continue Baltimore City's tireless effort and work in prioritizing the health and safety of our waterways, to continue to strive to be best in class. DPW is a great steward and protector of the waterways of this city, and it's moving toward greater stewardship with the enterprise changes and successes that we've done thus far. And so today, with this honorable board's approval, we request this extension to be granted. Mayor Scott and his administration's continued commitment urgently move this plant into compliance. And so for decades to come, we will move this plant into more compliance. And it's illustrated with the commitment of the parties that negotiated this agreement between MDE, MES, and the city. With that, we're requesting this extension to December 31st, not only to continue the collaborative efforts, but also with this amendment. It allows MES to continue prosecuting its work to final completion, assists DPW with staffing shortfalls, and also allowing us to procure goods and services that DPW otherwise could not obtain without the support of our partners with MES. And also, I would like to express the successes of this amendment by allowing us to reduce the cost that MES can incur on projects from $2.25 million to $250,000. Again, that's a testament to the amount of work and effort that DPW in this city has performed to ensure that we are protecting our waterways. And so we request this honorable board to extend and agree and approve this amendment to continue that great effort. And again, I would like to thank our partnership with MES and MDE, which has been very beneficial to DPW and this great city to continue its efforts to ensure that our waterways are safe, healthy, and protected. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I think the mayor has a question or concern.
One question for you, sir. You said that both Back River and Patapsco were operating at permit. Do you know when the last time that was true? Or does Director Mitchell might know?
We both have the answer, but Director Mitchell.
I don't have the exact time, Mayor, but it's been quite a few years since both treatment plants has been working in operable order with consistent meeting effluent standards. And so we're excited that, today that we are meeting those standards. And it's a lot of teamwork and effort to be able to turn it around, just over the last year.
Thank you for that, Director, and thank you to you and your entire team and our partners in the state as well for all the work that's being done for something that we know was overdue and that we have a lot more to do, but this is a significant milestone in those efforts, so thank you very much.
Mr. Comptroller?
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Noted, counsel. This amendment limits us to $250,000 that we will agree to pay MES for upcoming work. Did I catch in your remarks how much MES has billed the city for so far?
Yeah, it should be approximately around $2 million.
Okay, all right. And can you talk with us about what measures have been put in place to keep these kind of issues at Back River from reoccurring in the future? Or is it, or would that be somebody else from DPW?
I would love to talk about, we're still in litigation and negotiating many of these things, but what I can tell you, one of the things in which the court highlighted in many of our efforts was one that was very critical was standing up an environmental regulatory compliance program, which holds DPW and its staff accountable. And so we don't need federal state regulators to tell us to do our job. We're doing our job. In addition to the investments doing, speeding up the capital improvement programs that we had in place was very critical. Calling and also creating accountability with our vendors and suppliers was very critical. And as we talk more about these issues, I'll be able to express once we resolve our legal matters. But those critical issues issues and positions were critical. And I do want to highlight that the court noted that Dr. Mitchell's leadership was critical with that. I mean, coming from Oakland here and understanding these issues was provided that keen expertise to help us shift, right? Okay. And then working with our vendors and partnering with them, and MES too was a vital asset with that to providing us additional operators and support in our procurement efforts as well. So those activities was critical, and then understanding what the issue was. Like, we had to really, the engineers and the scientists at DPW, they're best in class, and really digging deep and understanding the assets, understanding the processes and the issues, and figuring out scientifically what the problem is, and then immediately pivoting to address it. And that's how we were able to turn it around in 3 months with that expertise.
And then the last question I have is if you can share with the board, if you guys have a rough sense of what further capital improvements are going to need to be completed out at Back River.
Thank you. I think many of the capital improvements that are there with our digesters and improving our primary saline tanks are already within the budget. Okay. There won't be any larger capital requests. Our goal is to continue to perform excellent maintenance on the system and making sure that we do preventative, proactive maintenance and predictive maintenance so that we can ensure that these systems continue to stay online and we have the level of redundancy to be successful like we have for Back River for nearly 5 months now.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, did you have? Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and properly second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found. Thank you so much to the council. The next item can be found on pages 110 and 112 through 119, Department of Finance. This request is to approve fiscal year 2022 year-end appropriations adjustments orders for multiple agencies and venues, as well as transfer surplus appropriation between services within the same agency and fund the balance of the budget. Collectively, these items are necessary to balance the books and close out the city's fiscal 2022 budget. On behalf of the Department of Finance, we have BBMR Director, Mr. Bob Senemy, to speak on behalf of the administration. Bob, the
Okay,
floor is
thank you,
yours.
and good morning to the honorable members of the board. Bob Sanamy, Department of Finance. The package we have submitted here, there's multiple items, is all related to closing out the fiscal year 2022. Just wanted to give some context. 22 was a really great year for the city financially. We saw a very rapid recovery from COVID, where we had struggled in fiscal 20 and 21. We also had an extraordinary year in the housing market, which led to a significant surplus in transfer and recordation receipts especially. We ended in the general fund net up $113.9 million. So $113.9 million net surplus in the general fund. Those are unaudited figures, but based on the numbers we've seen as of closeout. The package of items we submitted today, there's two pieces. The first is carry forwards. The second is the supplemental. So I'll mention the carry forwards first. So the charter allows agencies, if they have unspent money in their budget, if they intend to use it for the purpose that it was originally appropriated for, they're allowed to carry that money into the next fiscal year. Finance reviews those requests, make sure they meet the intent of the law, and we're recommending $9.6 million of agency dollars that will carry forward into 23. And again, most of those items are for things where an agency has done something but hasn't paid the bill yet, or had money that they were not able to spend that they intend to spend in the next fiscal year. For the supplementals, we are required by law to make sure that every agency ends in balance. And so where we have any agencies that overspend their appropriation, we're required to go first to the board and then to the council to get those approved. There are 7 of those today, and I want to explain them because some of these were either COVID related or were planned in some regard. First one is the health department. We had costs for related to COVID-19 still for testing, PPE, vaccine administration, and sheltering in hotels for homeless individuals. All of those costs will be eventually reimbursed by FEMA. They're still providing support back to the city. So those were expenses we chose to incur knowing will be reimbursed. Same is true for the planning item. We're still doing a feeding program that's related to COVID that we are getting reimbursed for from FEMA. Same is true for the DGS item. There were costs for security, cleaning, decontamination, and temperature scan devices during COVID. All of those will be reimbursed by FEMA. So those are the first 3. We also have a supplemental for the Convention Center Hotel, and as I've shared with folks before, our agreement as part of the debt issuance many years ago, the city is required to pay up to $7 million a year out of the general fund if we cannot meet the debt service expenses. And so we did trigger that this year, and we're asking for a supplemental in the Convention Center Hotel to make sure we can meet that commitment. The other 3 items are not COVID related, but just wanted to explain what those are. So in DOT, we had budget for the expenses to manage our traffic camera program. We rolled out cameras more quickly than was anticipated, so we had some additional expenses there. That, of course, comes with additional revenue from those cameras, so that was the DOT item. In finance, we had additional costs for the Workday transition and to hire folks to help with a backlog of invoices that had not been paid on time. And then there's an item under what we call miscellaneous general expenses. It's a kind of catch-all agency in the budget. We had an accounting correction. We had some expenses that hit in fiscal 21 for certain personnel costs that basically accrued in a balance sheet account during the transition from Workday, which was a mistake. We learned of that, and we had to take those costs in fiscal 22. So there's a supplemental for that. That doesn't change the net position of the city. It's just a timing issue between fiscal 21 and 22. There's also one final supplemental, which is to balance any other agencies if they had differences in spending within their agency. So the board is required to approve, or we're asking the board to approve, if an agency had a service where they spent a little bit more and another service where they spent less, there's a whole package of items to balance those by agency. Those do not require council approval because those are a little bit more routine. So that's the package of items in front of the board today, and I'm happy to take any questions on those items.
Thank you, and sorry for not properly addressing you. Mr. Deputy Director of Finance. now,
Thank
right?
you.
So,
Thank you.
Give you up for your promotion. At this time, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? In full transparency, I was able to brief with Deputy Director Sinema in my office as well, so we've had a chance to go through all these items and go through the presentation. I think there is a question from the solicitor.
Briefly, when you say that a number of these items will be reimbursed by FEMA, I take it that'll come at some point in the future?
That's
when the reimbursement comes in, it'll be available for the city to spend on other items?
That's right. That will be the case potentially in fiscal +23. So the way we've been managing these reimbursements is we, early on and during the pandemic, with our consultant Ernst & Young, we were able to identify that there were certain costs that would be reimbursable by FEMA. You have to spend the money first and then get it reimbursed later. So what we're doing is we submit these project worksheets that say this is what we've spent, and then they send us a check. Now, there were reimbursements that hit in fiscal '22 that were for things that hit in '21. So we're going to be in this kind of lag period until that winds up. But that is correct that we will get some reimbursement that will hit in the fiscal '23 budget revenue that was for things that were spent in fiscal '22. So that will probably play out at least over the next maybe 6 to 9 months when that winds down.
Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? Hearing and seeing none, it's time I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it.
I think we had to have a motion to approve all, more than one.
Well, we read it in all this. Yeah, so we read them in all together. But thank you for your due diligence, Mr. Mayor. He was just making sure that there's multiple items, multiple pages, multiple line items. That's the way we read it in as a group. So Mr. Mayor was just making sure that we are in accordance to that, and we are. There was a motion, it was seconded, and I think there was approval. We're all good, no unreadiness there. All right, so this item is approved. That concludes business before the desk. We will adjourn until bid opening at 12 noon. The next regularly scheduled meeting for the Board of Estimates will occur on Wednesday, November the 2nd at 9 a.m. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. Baltimore, we absolutely love you.
25 hasn't turned us on yet. They can't hear me. Hello, TV 25. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to bid opening for the City of Baltimore, October 19th, 2022. Welcome to our live audience today as well. We have 2 addenda to share this afternoon for upcoming bids. One is for Public Works, WC 1400, pavement resurfacing at various locations. A new opening date has been given to us. That new opening date is November 2nd, 2022. Again, that was WC 1400, and the new opening date for that bid is November 2nd, 2022. We have another addenda, procurement B5000-6559, supply and delivery of uniforms. This bid opening date is now scheduled for December 7th, 2022. Again, that was B5000-6559, and that is scheduled to open on December 7th, 2022. And up first today, we have a bid for Recreation and Parks, RP 21808, Walter P. Carter Pool and Bathhouse. And Jim, I believe you're going to tell me that no bids were submitted.
Yes, no bids were received for RP 21808, Walter P. Carter Pool and Bathhouse.
Again, we have no bids submitted for RP 21808. And up next, we have a bid for the Bureau of Procurement, contract number B5000-6614. This is police requested towing services, and we have a 2-part bid today, so we will be opening both of those parts and sharing those numbers. So bear with us as we start our meticulous opening process.
Yes, as we begin, I will announce there's no bid bond required for this solicitation. There is a $250 application fee for those companies that are applying for or renewing their taxi medallion rather than checking each submission for those checks, because they won't all have them, we'll simply refer them to procurement and the Bureau of Procurement, and they will screen for those checks. The first bid is from Universal Towing. Do you need the address, or do you have that?
I have the address for that one,
You
thank
have
you.
it. All right. Total bid price, we have, as you said, item 1 and item 2 elements of the bid. Total bid price for item 1, Universal Towing, $256,100.
That number was 256,100.00.
Yes. Item 2, total bid price, $67,300.
That number was 67,300.00.
Yes.
And let's just give Stephen a moment to catch up with us, because he's seeking the page.
Oh, can you say the second one again?
Yep. Oh, actually, it looks like they totaled that there. I have, these are bids for item 1 and item 2 for Universal Towing. My number for item 1 was $256,100. And item 2 came in at $67,300. I can repeat that.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
And there were 3 duplicates for each.
Fabulous. Great.
You ready for the next one?
I am.
Okay. Next submission is from C&S Towing and Transport, LLC, C&S Towing and Transport. Item 1, total bid price, $482,000.
That number was 482,000.00.
Yes. Item 2, total bid price, $73,000.
That number was 73,000.00.
Yes.
That was CNS Towing, and for item 1, we have $482,000, and for item 2, $73,000.
Correct.
And how many copies do we have, Steve?
We have,
An original and one?
okay, 1 original and 1 copy. Yeah, this might be one. Yeah. Correct.
Great. Yep.
Next submission is Good Luck Towing, LLC. Good Luck Towing, LLC. For bid item 1, we have unit prices, but a total of 0.
So they did not total item 1?
Yes.
So we'll refer that to purchasing for their review?
Yes.
And item 2?
Item 2, similarly, they have rates and units in there, but their total is listed as 0.
Okay, that was Good Luck Towing, and they did not provide totals for item 1 or item 2.
Yes.
And that's just an original?
Yes.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Whenever you're ready, Jim.
The next submission is from the Auto Barn Incorporated. Auto Barn Incorporated. Item 1, for the total bid price, we have rates and extended prices, but 0 total.
Okay.
Similarly, for total bid price, item 2, rates and extended prices, but 0 for the total.
Okay, this item will also be referred to purchasing for their review of the itemized numbers given.
Yes.
And do we have multiple copies, Stephen?
Yes. There's 3 copies of A and 3 copies of B.
Okay. Do we have an address for Auto Barn? Do you see one? I don't see it on, I'm looking over Stephen's shoulder.
2930 James Street, Baltimore, Maryland, 21230.
Thank you. Okay.
Ready for the next one?
Yep.
Next submission is from McDell Enterprises, MCDEL Enterprises Incorporated. Item 1, total bid price, $480,100.
That number is 480,100.00.
Yes.
Okay.
Item 2, total bid price, they have rates in there, but 0 for their total.
Okay. Again, this item will also, well, all of them will ultimately be referred to procurement, but those will need to be referred to procurement for review since the items are not totaled. So that was McDell Enterprises, and for item 1, Stephen, I have $480,100 and 0 total for item 2.
Correct.
There are numbers, but no total.
Correct.
And we have an original plus,
2 copies.
thank you.
Actually, 1 copy. And then this is the technical submission.
Hmm.
So this is the Part B price and MBE
Do you have an
submission.
original in your hand?
Yes.
Still? Okay,
That-
so.
Yeah, we have original plus 1, it sounds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next submission is Frankford, Frankford Towing LLC, Frankford Towing LLC.
Okay, I've got a lot of Frankfurts here. So this is Frankfurt Towing LLC.
Yes.
Okay.
Item 1, total bid price, $521,100.
That number was 521,100.00.
Yes.
Okay.
Item 2, total bid price, $73,000.
That number was 73,000.00.
Yes.
That was Frankfurt Towing LLC. And item 1 was $521,100. And item 2 was $73,000 total.
Correct.
And we have an original and,
We have several duplicates. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 duplicates.
Next submission is from Mel's Towing, M-E-L''S,
yep,
Towing. Item 1, total bid price, $521,100.
that was 521,100.00.
Yes. Total bid price, item 2,
Mhm.
$73,000.
73,000.00.
Yes.
Okay, that was Mel's Towing and Services Center. Item 1, 500.
Yeah,
Oh,
just
sorry,
give
I'll
me
give you a
second.
second.
I'm trying to find it in here. Very helpful when they put the
The little markers.
Page.
markers down.
B19R is the page number.
Oh. Oh, okay. Gotcha. B19R.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So I have $521,100 as the total for item A,
Mm-hmm.
and $73,000 as the total for item 2.
Correct.
And we have an original and how many?
Looks like 3 copies.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
The next submission is Frankford Towing Service, LLC. Frankford Towing Service, LLC. Total bid price, item 1, is $521,100. Total bid price, item 2, is $73,000. If you just read that.
That was item 1, 521,100.00. And
Yes.
item 2, 73,000.00.
Yes.
So that was Frankfurt Towing Services LLC. And my total for item 1, $521,100. And the total for item 2, $73,000.
Correct.
And we have an original and
And 3 copies.
Okay. Next submission is Frankford Towing, Inc. Frankford Towing, Inc.
got it?
Total bid price, item 1, $521,100.
That was 521,100.00.
Yes. Total bid price, item 2, $73,000.
73,000.00.
Yes.
So Stephen, Frankfurt Towing Incorporated, $521,100.
Correct.
And item 2 was $73,000.
Correct.
And we have an original and
And 3 copies.
3 copies.
Okay, next submission is Ted's Towing Service, Inc. Ted's Towing Service, Inc. Total bid price, item 1, $521,000.
That was 521,000.00.
Yes.
No, I got 521,100.
Yes.
Oh.
$521,100.
I will repeat that again, 521,100.00.
Yes. Total bid price, item 2, $73,000.
73,000.00.
Yes.
That was Ted's Towing Services, Inc. Total for item 1, $521,100. And total for item 2, $73,000.
Correct.
And that was an original plus.
Plus 3 copies.
Plus 3. Thank you.
The next submission is Frankford Towing Associates, LLC.
Okay.
Frankford Towing Associates. Total bid price, item 1, $521,100. Total bid price, item 2, $73,000.
So item 1, 521,100.00.
Yes.
And item 2, 73,000.00.
Yes.
So Stephen, that was Frankfurt Towing Associates LLC. Item 1 total, $521,100. And
Correct.
item 2 total, $73,000.
Correct. And 3 copies.
Great, thank you.
The next submission is from Jim Elliott's Towing. Jim Elliott's Towing. Total bid price, item 1. They have rates and extended prices, but 0 for their total.
Okay. No total for their itemized list.
Yes.
And item 2?
Item 2, similarly, they have 0 for their totals, filled in with NA.
Got it. Again, this particular bid will be referred to procurement for them to review the itemized numbers. We can't provide a total.
Right.
And do we have an original plus?
Plus 3 copies.
Plus 3. Okay. And Jim, was that our last bid?
That is the last submission for B50006614.
Yep. That was our last bid for police requested towing services and also conclude, oh no, it doesn't conclude our business. We have one more big thing. Okay. Now we're going to move on to tax sale. Oh, it almost does conclude our business then. We also had tax sale auction of tax liens today scheduled, and we do not have any submissions. So that does actually conclude our business for today. Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we will see you on November 2nd, 2022.
Sure.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Sherelle. Thank you to our audience.